Does everyone have a seat? Everyone have a drink? I feel like I'm doing stand-up comedy. It's the only way I can get it in my head to have the energy for this. Alright, is everyone ready? Does everyone know what they're here to do? Or what they're here for? No, neither do I, so we all may be a little bit stuck. So we're here to talk about something that I'm sure we're all extremely passionate about, working with offshore teams. I spent most of the day trying to put a set of notes together for this talk, and every time I had the notes, all that really happened was I ended up bumping over my words and kind of not knowing what I was saying. And I realised eventually that I'm running this event because this is what we do, so I'm better just to speak a little bit naturally. Before I get started, what I meant to say is, Courtney, what is it? Top tech startup?
Yes, we're like adventures. Melbourne's top tech hub for innovation.
That's it, top tech hub for innovation. You're at YBS, so thank you very much to them for hosting it. And I meant to also say the toilets are over there. If there's a fire alarm, you'll probably hear a fire alarm, so it'll probably be quite clear what to do. You'll walk outside, get your stuff. And before anything else as well, Atula, the legend, we're going to let him say something.
Thanks, Ringo. Before we start, let me start it properly. I need to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we stand, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and also thank YBF, the top tech startup hub in Melbourne, the most popular co-working space in Melbourne as well among Silicon Beaches. We just had a co-working day today. It was capped at 40. We got 40 people in and 30 people on the wait list. And the April co-working day is already halfway full, so you can come and try this place next month. First of all, some of you are coming here on a Silicon Beach event for the very first time, so I'll just tell you what Silicon Beach is about. My name is Abdullah, I'm the lead organizer of Silicon Beach. Silicon Beach is Australia's answer to Silicon Valley. It's a meetup community, and it is for tech startup people and all those other people like lawyers, accountants, whatever, who want to help the startup founders. Our mission is empowering founders. So if you want to start a startup, even if you're thinking about a startup, this is the place to come and take your first steps on this long, hard journey. You need a community to support you, and this is that community. Tomorrow night we are having a monthly pitch night at Royal Melbourne Hotel, the pub down the road, just here. You're welcome to come to that on Meetup. There's already nearly 200 or more than 200 people RSVP, but there's room. And as you know, not everybody who RSVP is coming, and you can even do an impromptu pitch for 90 seconds. And there's so many other events, too many for me to mention. Without taking any more time, I'm going to hand you over back to Rico.
Thank you, Abdullah. Alright, so I think what I'm meant to do is get everyone to raise their hands based on a set of questions to get the audience involved and the energy going in the room. So who is here because they work with remote teams or are trying to figure out how to do it properly? Just raise your hand. Give me a big raise hand. Oh, that's half of you. Who's here because of an association with Silicon Beach or YBF, or just kind of ended out here by accident and saw the beers? Okay, cool. So we've actually got a pretty engaged room there. So in terms of the structure tonight, well, who are we is probably the first question. So a tool that you're well aware of. He's from Silicon Beach, he's helping organise a community, and the point of tonight was to kind of collaborate with him to, I guess, a community of founders who are having trouble finding technical talent onshore, deciding to go offshore, and are trying to figure out how to get it right. Secondly, and actually, I want to say a special thank you to Josh over here. He will be presenting second. He's actually getting married next week. He probably shouldn't be doing this. He's got a lot of time on his hands right now, but he still came here anyway. So I just want to give him a big round of applause and say thank you, Josh. and congratulations as well. That's awesome, man. And apparently it's torrential weather next week, so that's something to look forward to. Who are we? Everest Engineering. So that's me, Ringo. Nice to meet you all. I'm the one who you saw posting on the page and sending emails out. Craig, right up the back there. Craig's the one who actually has the experience in terms of working with remote teams. He'll tell you all about it. And that's kind of what we're coming with tonight. So we are an agency, that is what we do, but he's speaking more to his experience with Aconex building a global development workforce, and that's kind of where the lessons are coming from, and that's the point of tonight. So from our perspective, there's a bit of a bottleneck in the industry right now because onshore labour is extremely expensive and difficult to find, particularly for growing tech companies. The banks and the leading employers kind of suck all the talent up. So we're here to try and bring it all together, help mature the market, teach you the things that you don't know how to ask, and kind of bring it all together from that perspective. So after me, Craig is going to come on. He'll speak for maybe 10 minutes, then answer any questions that you have. After that, Josh will come on. He'll speak for maybe 10 minutes, answer any questions that you have. And then I've got a whole bunch of index cards that I'm going to hand out and try and encourage you to develop your own checklist to walk away with, so that you've kind of got it as some form of memory for moving on. And then we'll close it all off, have a few more beers, and get back to talking to each other. So, are we all ready? Cool? Yes! All right, Craig, you're up. Thank you, guys. Cheers. Yes, it's an intermission moment.
Hey, you know when you put a slide deck together and you think 10 minutes when you start, and at the end of it you're 60, 75 minutes, 90 minutes maybe. Let me rush through this, right? So, what I want to do with this is just kind of give you a bit of an overview, and in this slide deck we've got checklists and stuff, and we'll give you access to the slide deck later so you can kind of look at the notes and get that little dot point that you missed later. So this is the fast version. If you want to have a longer, slower version, when we wrap up tonight and we're standing around the 4 remaining beers, I can talk to you then as well. Or whatever. So my story is, I joined Aconex in 2013. Aconex is notorious because it was Australia's biggest tech exit. Oracle bought it last year for $1.6 billion. When I joined the company, there was 34 development team members in Melbourne, and I think it was 12, maybe it was 14, maybe it was 8, I can't quite remember. But there weren't many, and they were in Bangalore. When I wrapped up, when we left, so it got bigger. There was over 250 people. Through a series of acquisitions and organic growth, the team got quite large. And I was kind of managing that global collaboration, the whole team, getting the product developers and the engineers and the UX designers and the ops people to all work together in multiple countries and all that sort of stuff. So that was my job, just trying to keep the whole show running. And I picked up a few things. While we were doing that, we were able to maintain really good staff engagement, staff happiness, made customers happy, made profit, grew the business to that acquisition state. So a lot of things were going right at the time. When Oracle bought us, a handful of us decided, well, we want to pursue different paths in our career. Ranganathan there was the head of development in India, and he rang me one day and said, hey Craig, let's go into business together. And we did. So we started at EverestEngineering. And so that's the backstory of me and how I got to be standing here right now. So for years I've been doing this global management stuff, and also now I'm specifically in the business of doing remote teams. So as Ringo said, the motivators for people going overseas, there's not enough software developers in the world specifically for startups. There are some crazy numbers. Do you guys know, I think this is roughly from ABS, I'm not exactly sure, there's about 44,000 software developers in the world, in Australia I mean. Does anyone know that number? It's probably not quite right. It's probably an underestimation because there's probably people that aren't captured in those metrics. Do you know there's 75,000 business analysts in Australia? Right. So what else is interesting? There's a trade-off with working with overseas teams. It's the cost versus convenience. So sometimes people want to go arbitrage, get cheaper labour and so on. But on the other hand, you get the cost of remote working. So there's a thing that's in the dynamic. There's the market force, as Ringo said, you've got banks paying people $1,600 a day, you've got the REAs and SEEKs and so on in the world treating people really well and also still paying pretty well. And so if you're a startup, where the hell do you get your talent? And the other thing is sometimes you need specialist expertise. Put your hand up if you're an excellent provider of AI services to the market. I'm giving you an opportunity. What about blockchain? There's someone in the room that does blockchain.
Sure, there's some blockchain.
So there's people in the room that like can provide, but there's still not enough. So there's this notion of generally there's not enough software developers, and then you get that kind of high-end, sustainable, internet scale software development as well, software engineering, and then you have an even more talent supply-demand, more acute supply-demand problem when you get to specialist areas, particularly in emerging technologies. So there's stuff. You probably know the coding horror, Jeff Atwood picture. But the point of this picture is just to know if you're going to go work with overseas teams, know your motivations. Is it cost? Because that's probably not a good motivation. Is it to become international because your investors want you to become international? Maybe. Is it because you just need to get more people? Right? Is it a mix of all those things? Is it something else? One of the things when working with overseas team is to be truthful to yourself about what your motivations are. Because once you understand what you're trying to achieve, then you can take a more straight line path to it rather than saying one thing and doing another and building that congruence, not just in your own head, but in the team around you's head. So be aware of that. And the other thing, just the warning up the front, is there's the conversation around day rates, project costs, product costs, and total cost. All of those things are different to each other, and they exponentially scale. So when you're engaging in conversations with partners, not just remote ones, but locally as well, just think about the whole shebang and what you're getting into, because there's a lot of stuff. Sometimes it's financial and monetary, sometimes it's emotional costs, sometimes it's just time, particularly with overseas teams. If you work with Vietnam, great, time zone's not too bad. If you work with India, well, it's still half a day. If your development team is in France, maybe that's tougher, right? So be aware of that stuff. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to run through this. This is the fast version. We're going at clipping pace. Feel a bit intense?
Yeah, keep it up.
Yeah. 10 minutes? Just 10 minutes.
I'm not watching. Everyone's sharp.
So, the first part, it's just like I've kind of broken it up like that. So the first part is where to look, who to work with, and what to work together. And I've just got like 3 headlines, and then there's dot points underneath that. So there's a lot of stuff in this. I'm not going to play it all out to you. Just when you get to the end, grab the slide deck, read through it. If you want to ask questions, grab it and I'll talk to you anytime. So the first one, where to look. First thing I want to bring to your attention is the notion of creative cities. Has anyone come across that notion yet? Smart cities Ringo was talking about. Right. So the idea is, like, when you go to work with overseas teams, don't think about what country to go to, think about what city to go to, right? Because the modern economy is built around different cities, right? Yeah, economic regions are cities. And there's a book there, Strategies for Creative Economies. There's a whole bunch of books and blog posts and white papers and stuff all around creative cities. Here's from an academic paper, a list of attributes of creative cities. I've got my own version, which is actually pretty close to that. Yeah, so what's the social life? What's the social dynamic of the city? Is it liberal, or is it kind of authoritarian? Do people go out and have dinner and hang out and be social? Are they kind of staying indoors a lot? What's the art scene in the city? Are there music festivals? Are there art galleries? What's going on in the city? Do you want to hang out there? Is another part of it. Is it fun? Are there festivals? A lot of it comes back to how dynamically connected are the social networks in that city. Right? So if we're just talking to the same people, we're a closed circuit. If we're talking to lots of interesting different people from different segments, right? In our personal lives, you've got your artist friend, your foodie friend, your banker friend, right? They're all different conversations, and the combination of all those things makes your life more interesting. Same goes at scale for cities, right? So when you're looking overseas, think cities, don't think countries. So that's the first point. Second one is the vessel with the pestle holds the brew that is true. Is anyone here over 45? Right? So some of you might know Danny Kaye, right? All the young ones have no idea what I'm talking about, right? So PESTL's what do you call them? Not an acronym, what's the word? Mnemonic. Anagram? No, mnemonic, right? So PESTL's a mnemonic. There are the headlines: political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. There's a bunch of stuff in there, but you just use those headings to go, okay, so is it politically stable? Is politically this country heading in the direction that I think is going to make sense for me? For example, the United States, right? Would you outsource development to the United States at a politically tumultuous time like now? You'd have to think about it, right? So, economic. That's, is the economy growing? Are the skills, are the labour skills and so on? Is the knowledge economy happening in the right way that's trending in the right direction for what you're trying to do? That also thinks about things like currency exchange, what's happening, is it volatile, is it stable? That sort of stuff. Salary inflation is a funny thing. I remember when we started opening up in Bangalore, salary inflation in India was like 12% per annum for software developers, right? So you can imagine it didn't take long for the cost of a software developer in India to go from cheap to the same as in Australia. You know, and at the moment I think that's leveled off a bit in India, but like, you know, wherever there's like a supply and demand in equilibrium, that's not a word, is it? It'll be a factor. Is it a learning city? We talked about the creative city, so that's kind of on that front. Technology. So the basic things are like, you know, I remember when I first came across this model, it was the early 90s, and you know, we were talking about like, does the city have a regular power supply? You know, is the city connected to the internet? Basic things like that. But still, now it's like roads, floods, regular power supply, all that sort of stuff still matters. Pay attention to it. The legal ownership of IP. Hey, Josh. Movement of cash. Labour rights is an important thing. One thing that's good in India at the moment is like there's been a real drive in the last few years about labour rights and looking after the employees, which is you know, good to see. Yeah, and the orientation towards foreign investors. And then last, environmental. So, you know, what page are we on in terms of global warming, what you know, generation pollution, waste, all that sort of stuff. So we just, you know, are we on the same page, I guess, on that front. So the next one is, last point on the which city, where do I look, is your own networks, right? So this will go a long way, right? If you know someone who's got a good relationship with someone, that's a great first step, right? Don't waste that opportunity, right? Don't just go look at spreadsheets and, you know, internet-based reports. Like, yeah, talk to the people you know, speak broadly and loudly about your intention to work overseas, and see who comes to you with opportunities, and then talk through those opportunities and see what you discover. Second set, who to work with. So once you've found where you want to work with, who do you work with, right? The three topics, what's your motivation? What's the engagement model? And then matching the right, matching your kind of organisation to the partner organisation. Who here works in an organisation with, say, less than 50 people, right? Who here, out of you that put your hand up, would think it would be a good idea to go do your outsourcing with Accenture? Right? You get it, right? So they're going to fuck you over if you work with them. So, not necessarily the same case if you're ANZ Bank, right? You know, the relationships might be more one of equals in that instance, right? But the first point is like, what do you want to get out of this? I've got a couple of things up there as well. These little charts are kind of product strategy and business strategy charts. They're just ideas to have a look at. But what's your business strategy? Why are you going overseas? What kind of work do you think you want to deploy into these partner teams? I think this one here. Yeah, if there's a high dependency on customer domain, if there's a high degree of product complexity in legacy code, this is just one of many models, right? You go, okay, so if it's no real customer domain and it's commodity stuff, that's easy to get offshore to outsource to someone else. If on the other hand, you know, high degree of customer domain is required, but also you're kind of tied up in legacy code, yeah, it's going to require a high bandwidth collaboration, and you're going to need, like, you know, that's the sort of stuff where you go, let's co-locate, if you want to do all that sort of stuff. And then, you know, high level of complexity, but not a lot of customer domain. Well, that's where you want experts, people that are really good at that particular type of job. So, you know, like DevOps might be a kind of category of that type of work at the moment. And then the other one is, you know, you need a high level of product dependency, but not necessarily, product domain, but not necessarily complexity. So all those things just feed the way you think about how the work fits into somebody else's hands versus your own, right? And that's also in the context of what kind of company are you? Where's your IP? Does your competitive advantage lie in your technical competency, or does it lie in your customer domain knowledge, right? Or the relationships, or different places? So you think about those things first, and then you go, given that, what am I going to do if I have an overseas team? What kind of work am I going to give them, right? And then that's going to inform your thinking as you go forward. And of course, things emerge, right? So things change, right? You start with one intent, and then 18 months later, you're doing something different. That's life, but you think first. The other thing in who do I pick, there's different engagement models. And so the three things I've got there is like, it's a relatively simple situation, gets a bit more complicated, and then, you know, kind of emerges into complex. What kind of relationship do you have? And so in a simple thing, you can just buy transactional services. And so if you got, that's where the ANZ Bank or the Accentures kind of live, right? It's kind of transactional. They're not doing a lot of value add on top of each other's relationship. There's a contract and people work to contract. In the other one, it's complicated work. Thinking back to that 4x4, 2x2 model I had a minute ago, it's complicated, but it's not overly complicated. It's kind of straightforward. You can grow your own team, or you can find any reasonably good quality partner, and you can work together, and you can have contracts, and you can do time and materials, and you can do fixed price work and all that sort of stuff. But it's kind of built around a project, or it's built around a fixed goal, right? Or the other thing is, okay, so there's this notion of extended organisations. So I picked this up when I was reading Harvard Business Review a few years ago. Some research was being done into innovation, and the notion of the extended organisation, that jargon comes out of supply chain management, it's kind of partnerships on steroids, right? So what happens is, rather than like partner on something that the client wants, we partner bringing all our strengths to bear, and it may be more than just two partners, it could be multiple sets that come together. And what everyone's doing is opening in a spirit of openness and transparency and trust and collaboration. So it's a high collaboration thing, and people are, that's the sort of example where you'll have a supplier come to you with your product idea and say, actually, why don't we do this instead, right? Or if you've got like a software engineering team like mine, but you also want to do some AI stuff, you get a third party that does the AI, and you're actually the customer domain expert, right? So together you co-create the solution, right? So that's that kind of high maturity stuff. And it doesn't necessarily have a fixed outcome. Sometimes it can be exploring into the future together, right? So that's 3 different models that you can kind of, put your head around. Last one, in the who do I choose to work with, it's kind of fit, right? So what kind of person am I? What kind of organisation am I? Where am I in my business life cycle? I'm still figuring a few things out. Do I want to work with a company that's got everything worked out, it's highly bureaucratic, and is gunning for a particular set of goals that are in conflict with mine? So maybe, maybe not. We'll take it on a case-by-case basis and figure it out, and so should you. Right? What do you want to get out of this engagement? I think when I was specifically thinking about this for this event, it made me remember that when I work with third parties, we don't just talk about the project goal or the business goal. We talk about what do you want to do as an organisation. So when I was managing stuff at Aconex, we had two agencies that we regularly worked with in India, and we would go to them and we'd talk about where they're at in their business growth cycle, what they're trying to achieve, and there'd be this to and fro, there'd be this give and take between the two of us. Sometimes they couldn't fulfil a goal for us, but because we were open and we were trying to work together, we would let some things slide and other things, we would really absolutely have to get done. And so in those instances, they would put the extra effort in to make it work for us, right? So a bit of give and take in that relationship. But that was because we were matching to the right style of organisation for the type of organisation that we were. Lastly, I didn't make that 10 minutes, did I? Lastly, how to work together. One of the most fundamental things, of course, is to set expectations early, right? Things about what are we here to do? What are our roles? How are we going to work together? There's some real magic around accountability stuff, right? We're jointly accountable versus you're accountable for this and I'm accountable for that, right? And then you can get much stronger and deeper co-creation, I guess, when you're working collaboratively together. But not everyone is going to do that, and you don't necessarily want that every time. So just think about what you do want. There's another thing about sharing customer feedback. Often it's like just get the job done. But if agile software development, right? We're constantly validating lean startup. We're constantly getting customer feedback. Pump that feedback into the development team of your partner, because forget about the company relationships. That individual person that's doing work gets fired up and motivated. And like I was reading some stats on innovation any other day, 2, 3, sometimes 5 times performance out of people that have direct customer feedback versus people that don't, right? Just take that back to your whole stuff, right? Take that back to everyone you work with. The more customer feedback you can put into people's hands, the more fired up, the more excited, the more motivated, the more creative they get about doing work. There's a few other points, but one that came in the questions on the meetup site was, what do I do about poor performance? So right up front, get clear about standards. Sometimes you might struggle to articulate it, but then you build in regular check and reviews, right? So my view is you should never go longer than a week without inspecting the work of a supplier, in software development. So just check, right? And if you don't have the competency, get a mate to come along and check it for you. Find someone in this room that can help you out. But inspect the work and just watch the quality, right? And then once you establish that the quality is regular, you can kind of slow down the checking cadence. But the other thing is, like, if a problem emerges, right? What are you going to do about it? Have you already talked through it? So right up front, you need to have a conversation about if things go wrong, what will we do, right? And in that way, if I am delivering bad quality, we were great for the first 2 months, but now the quality's dropped off, we've swapped people in, and different people are working on your project and all that sort of stuff. What are you going to do about it? First of all, give us feedback straight away. Hey, that thing you're doing, I don't like it, stop it, right? Work together to try to solve the problem. But if people don't come to the party, end the relationship as quickly as possible. It's not always easy. Sometimes you get things mid-flow, you're in the middle of something, you've got this critical business goal you have to achieve. Know that you should cut it off as quick as possible because it's just a sunk cost, right? And you're all generally familiar, everyone's heard of the sunk cost fallacy as a concept, right? So the idea being, once it's bad, it's not going to get better. Cut it off, move on, right? Interactions. So when working with people in remote teams, whether they're in Albury, Vietnam, Ukraine, India, France, wherever. So yeah, a lot of this is common sense, but it's just more amplified because we're not in the same room together, and so we can't just kind of push back in a casual way. All the conversations adopt a slightly more formal tone, right? There's a funny conversation I had years ago. Somebody in a team in India was complaining about something to his manager, and somebody in Melbourne was complaining about the same thing from a different point of view to their manager in Australia, and then eventually it kind of floated up a ladder of managers. And the guy that was, not really Nathan, but the guy before him in India and me ended up on a phone with each other, and we're like, so there's this thing. Yeah, there's this thing. Do we need to do something? I don't know. Maybe we don't. Maybe it's just a little thing, and if they're in the same room with each other, it would have just been like, half an hour of blow off steam and move on. But because it's remote, people aren't just kind of picking up the phone and talking to each other. And now, if we make them, it's a big deal. So this is awkward. What do we do? On that cliffhanger. So we didn't know what to do, and so we called the people to account and said, you people are responsible for solving your own problems, talk to each other, right? But we did it kind of back down the chain rather than like bringing it all together, and it seemed to defuse the situation. But just look at that list, right? Let people contribute, let people bring their strengths, get to know each other as people. Everyone's always in a rush, and then when we condense the interactions to just that 1 hour or 45 minutes of meeting time online, right, we're in a rush again. A woman was in Melbourne, is in Melbourne this week, Lisette Sutherland. She's running some remote workshops on how to work well remotely. So if anyone wants to know more about that, just get in touch with me and I'll point you at the website later. But it's just take time to get to know each other, right? Make time. Like we've got some clients that work with us, and for 5 or 6 weeks it's been kind of going okay. But then what happened is their team, one's in Canberra, one's in Sydney, one's in Byron Bay, and they all flew to Melbourne to go to a friend's wedding. Then they spent 3 days coding together, and then they went, this is really working well, we need to do that with the other guys, so they just flew over to Bangalore and they're in the same room. They're like, Simon, the leader of that group, just sent us a message on Monday and said, this one day made the trip worthwhile, just because we're face to face, and it's just defusing all that kind of formality and like the too polite and all that sort of stuff. And now we're just a bunch of people in a room working together, right? So listening, travel, video chat. Don't degrade to transactional. Don't micromanage it. Don't avoid or delay negative feedback. Give that as fast as you can. Don't expect things to work in all teams. That's another thing I saw multiple times. Not just they can expect in many companies. People start to converge to standard practices. Every team's a snowflake, right? And if while you will have some things that are standard, you still need to have a dialogue, but don't make it a dialogue where you're, hey everyone, we're going to collaborate, this is how we're going to do it, right? Bring people into the conversation and listen to what they've got to say and engage people together to try to figure out how to work effectively together. Understand the strengths and weaknesses of each group. And of course, don't let all chat devolve to typed chat. So lastly, in this particular set, second lastly, in this particular set, tooling, right? So have you got the right tools in place? There's a ton of great tools, and Lisette, the woman that's in Melbourne at the moment doing workshops on remote teamwork, remote skills, collaboration stuff, has got a website. Her website is Collaboration Superpowers, and she's got a web page which is just a list of awesome tools. So she and a handful of her colleagues vet the great tools on the internet and say this is the best set that you could work with. So it's a great list, right? And again, you'll be able to get access to this slightly later. But collaborationsuperpowers.com/tools. That's the thing you want to see. Lastly, sorry, Dimitri, I haven't got Ukraine up here. I didn't know you were coming. But lastly, there's this great thing. We think human beings, we're all unique. Every one of us is a variation on normal. But this guy Offshore started in the early 1990s or 80s or something, and he started surveying employees at IBM about how their stance was, like towards a certain bunch of attributes, and he's been doing that since then. He's extended the surveys beyond the IBM employees, and there's like a couple of 100,000 people that have been through this survey, and there's these things, power, distance, so that's like, deference to authority, I think. Individualism versus group orientation, masculine versus feminine attributes, whatever that means. It's like described on the website in more detail, but it's kind of like asserting dominance and kind of pushing people around. Aggressive, I think, behaviours might be better than masculine versus passive behaviours. And then uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation. I love this one because Australians are shit at it. And and I remember, like, the only people that are there's two other people in the world that are sets of people in the world that are as bad as us, Americans and English people. Right? And everyone else in the world takes a more long-term view about the future. Indulgence, how quickly we are to reward ourselves. So there's a bunch of cool attributes on that, and this website, which you can see the link there, will let you call up and compare. And it's a good website to look at. I wouldn't say it's the definitive solution, but it's definitely worth having a look at. And then what happens is, even though they're kind of national norms from a certain class of people still vary from that. So just because you're working with someone in India doesn't mean, or something that's opposite us, doesn't mean that they're not a short-term thinker. They may well be. But it just gives you a cue, and it gives you a trigger for a conversation, right? So when you go back to setting expectations and talking about how you're working, you can use this as a reminder that there's assumptions in the way you operate that might be different to theirs. So there's the checklist. That checklist is available to you. You just, we'll share it out via the Meetup network later. You're welcome to get in touch. There's the list again, right? That's us. Ready, Josh? Yeah, I'm the guy in the middle. That's me before I had a haircut. That's Randy Nathan, that's Ringo, you figured that out. Here's our details. So, thanks for listening. Was that okay?
Craig and I actually had a bit of fun, so I'd like to know if you actually thought that was valuable, because if you didn't, it would be funny. So put your hand up high if you thought it was valuable, medium if you thought it wasn't. Wow, damn it, that's not funny. Nice. Good job, Craig. Well done, mate. So everybody, I haven't loaded Josh's presentation onto here yet, so stand up, shake it off, get a beer if you want, introduce yourself to the person next to you if you don't know them already. Go on, up, come on. Please, sorry, I didn't mean to treat you like dogs, just no one was moving. You can run away as well if you decide that you don't want to be here. There's a couple of people doing that.